I'm Sasha Laundy. I founded Women Who Code a few months ago, and I'm here to tell you a bit about why I started it, my story, as well as some keys, things I think helped make the launch of the group successful that you can take with you to any sort of group that you want to start. So, and I've left lots of room for questions at the end of it. So the group is, as is said on here, it's Tech Talks, Hack Nights, basically a space for women to be nerds and to be coders. But that's only open to women, which really changes the dynamics quite a bit. And before I start that, I want to just tell you that I love Python. It's my favorite programming language. I love it. It's like the Beatles of programming languages. It just gets better over time, and there's something for everyone. You know, there's an Abbey Road, and then there's what's one of their earlier albums? You know, their teeny bopper phase. My mom was at the Ed Sullivan Show. But there's something for everyone for the Beatles, and there's something for everyone in Python. It's great for beginners. It's great for experienced developers. And so I started using Python professionally when I was fresh out of a career change a few months ago. And I was working for a really tiny startup that was pre-product, pre-funding. We were using Python and Web2Py. And Web2Py is an open source framework, kind of like Django. And I wanted to build my community, because I didn't know any Python developers in the Bay Area. And so I wanted to get to know them, to bounce ideas off of them, to ask them questions. You know, when you're learning a new thing and you get stuck and you can bang your head against it for 6 hours, or you can ask someone and you'll get an answer in 10 minutes. You know, right? Yes? Yes? Okay. So I wanted to get a group of Python developers together to help me get through those head-banging hours and just sort of cruise through my coding. And so, and it's going to sound like I'm picking on Yelp here. I'm not. This was almost a year ago. Hopefully things have changed. But I came to a San Francisco Python group meetup actually here in the same room. And the speaker was the guy who created Web2Py. So it was like, cool, I get to hear about Web2Py, I get to meet some Python developers. And there were 150 people here, and I was the only woman that did not work for Yelp. So look around, all these people, all men and plus me. So I was like, cool, whatever, I majored in physics, I can handle it. No big deal, I like sports. I'm used to this. And so it didn't bother me until I started talking to people after the event. And again, this is not just this one event, this is every event, every time. And I would go up and meet people, and I would expect to be treated like a peer, like an equal, like someone who was there for a real reason, and get questions like, oh, what'd you think of the talk? Like, what kind of things do you build? You know, I expected questions like that. Instead I got, what brings you here? Are you a recruiter? No, I'm not a recruiter, I just have earrings on, thank you. So, and again, this wasn't just the Yelp event, this is every event I go to. It's so exhausting. I also A/B tested my introductions because I'm a nerd. I found a few things. I found that if I'm meeting a male engineer, I have to impress them in the first 3 sentences, or the conversation gets cut off within a few minutes and they leave and go talk to someone else. Seriously. And this is really interesting because that's a strategy that completely backfires if you're talking to a non-engineer male or any woman, as a woman. So try this next time you meet male engineers. It really works, and it will really screw you over if you try it on anyone else. But so I found that I was constantly underestimated, and I constantly had to prove myself, and it was exhausting. And I stopped going to these events because instead of meeting people who were peers who would collaborate with me on coding, I met people who just wanted to go on dates with me, or wanted to hire me but didn't have any idea what my skill set was, or thought I was a recruiter, or whatever. And so I just stopped going to them because it was just exhausting. But I did go to one event called She's Geeky. Have any of you guys gone to this event? Okay, cool. So I was like, oh, an unconference, this sounds kind of weird. Let's just leave this blue, whatever. So I went to this event, and I didn't really know what to expect because I'd never been to an unconference before. And I went, and it was amazing. It really like totally blew me away because for the first time in my life, I was in a room full of all women, or not all women, but almost all women. It was the first women-only space I'd been in, and it was really, really energizing, and people assumed I was competent instead of assuming I was incompetent, which was obviously a refreshing change. And I came away totally energized from this group, and I was like, wow, what if I could have a Python meetup like that? That would be awesome. And so I started one. So let me catch up with my cards here. Sorry, I'm a little tired. I just put all of my worldly belongings into a box in Oakland, and hopefully I'll see them in New York in a week. Fingers crossed. Okay, so I posted this meetup on meetup.com. I plunked down the $75 and set a little reminder in my calendar for 6 months to cancel the group if no one else wanted to code with me. And I put up an event and hoped that 10 other people would sign up and maybe 3 would show up so I wouldn't have to code by myself. And this was at Blazing Cloud, a venue that holds about 35 people. And a few hours later, I had to scramble to shut down RSVPs because 100 women had signed up for the first event. So it blew me away. Thanks. And I seem to have really hit a nerve here because 8 months later, yesterday we hit 1,000 women in the group and we got mentioned in the New York Times. So you should come. If you haven't been yet and you code, we would love to have you come to an event, check it out. It's a really phenomenal community. I've seen people who want to be mentors and people who want to be mentees come together to talk to each other. I've seen people find study buddies and friends. I've seen at least 3 people get hired from this group and 3 more who might very soon, hopefully. And I basically consider it a platform to meet other technical women to do whatever you want to do. Some people have started study groups. There are 2 weekly language-specific study groups. The Python one just ended. Lynn, who's right there, started the Python one, has done a great job with that. And Judy, are you here? Okay, Judy's not here. It's just too bad for the group because Judy's great. She runs Ruby Tuesdays, which is a weekly Tuesday Ruby study group, right? I go for obvious naming, clearly. So basically, let me now tell you a little bit about some things that I consider keys to success for starting the group. So one of them was focus and scope. Defining the focus of the group. So I talked to a lot of people before I started the group, and I decided that women in Python was too narrow. I was worried there wouldn't be enough women, since I was the only one, apparently. There wouldn't be enough women to start the group, and women in tech was too broad, because there are already lots of groups for women in tech in general, so that was too many. But there weren't really any groups aimed at women developers specifically in San Francisco, and so I started to go for that. And so defining the scope up front and who you're serving really shapes what kind of events you have, because developers don't come out to socialize. You have to trick them into coming out of their houses. So if you want developers to come to your event, you have to hold a hack night or a tech talk or something where they will do something or learn something. That's the first thing I learned. So defining my audience, developers, shape the type of events that I hosted. So that's really the first thing you have to do when you're thinking about this. Some other things I did. I prepared like crazy. I networked for months before I started the group. I met tons of people in Silicon Valley. I found that the people who organize the best, the biggest, the most well-run events in Silicon Valley and picked their brains and cornered them and was like, talk to me for 20 minutes on the phone, tell me the things I should be thinking about that I'm not. Bring name tags. That's one thing I wouldn't have thought of if they hadn't told me that. Got some great help there. And then once I was ready to launch the group, I had a list of like 60 people who know thousands of people that I could email and say, hey, here's this little blurb about this thing I told you about. I told you I was going to start like 3 months ago. Could you send it to anyone you think would be interested? And so starting strong, starting big, I highly recommend that as a strategy. Instead of like starting small because you're worried no one's going to show up. I was definitely worried of that. Start big and then go from there because buzz and excitement and energy really can carry you very far. I also promoted relentlessly on Twitter. Twitter and Meetup were basically the top 2 ways that people found us. Don't be shy, because there are a lot of people out there who want to hear about what you're working on. So promoted relentlessly on Twitter. TweetDeck, great tool. You can schedule tweets ahead of time. There are lots of fancy doohickeys you can use to schedule tweets, but just get the word out there and do it fairly frequently. I also having a high level of professionalism is important to me. I wanted the events to be really tightly run, and this shocked people on the first meetup. I was really surprised by how low expectations were. Apparently my copywriting is really bad on meetup.com because people came in and I was like, hi, I'm Sasha, nice to meet you. There's pizza and beer and soda and cupcakes over there. And they were like, what? Really? I was like, yeah. They're like, oh, cool. And so they were just surprised that I had actually gotten a food sponsor on the first day. So, and they were excited about that, and they were excited about the group, and they told all their friends, and we still had like 10 signups a day for like 3 or 4 days after the event. So people went home and told other friends like, oh, you should have gone to this thing. So doing it really well, I think, has been a key for success. The little red velvet Twilio cupcakes, since Twilio is a food sponsor, also a key to success. Get the cupcakes. They're from a bakery called Freakin' Sweet, and they're freaking sweet. On 2 levels, pun intended. Okay. 2 other things. Enable others. One, I've mentored a few people who started workshops and study groups and things, and I've also talked to a few others who ended up deciding not to start those things. But my goal is to help others be successful, and that has taken lots of different forms throughout the group, but that's really my goal in talking to people and in engaging with the group, is to help them be successful at their goals. I used to be a teacher, and that habit dies hard. And the last thing is really the closest thing to like a secret sauce type suggestion I have, which is stand by the door and say hi to people when they come in, because they're nervous, they're awkward, they're back in high school mode, they don't know like what's happening or if they have any friends there, or if they're gonna be embarrassed or whatever. So stand by the door, say hi to them, say, hey, I'm Sasha, what's your name, welcome, there's the pizza, and then they can like go to the pizza and sort of eat and like look around and like make a friend. But it makes a huge difference in the feel of the event and the energy of the people there. It's really like, it sounds silly, but it's so effective. I don't know why everyone doesn't do it. So those are some keys to success, some things I thought about when I was starting the group. I would love to hear any questions you have. Thank you for listening to me.